I'm Juliet with Silicon Slopes, here with former COO of Nike and executive board member and venture capitalist, Eric Sprunk. We're happy to have you, Eric.
Thanks, Juliet. It's great to be here, actually. It's quite an event.
We're happy to have you. So you've held varying different executive positions, and now you serve as executive board member for several boards, actually. And you made that transition from COO of Nike. How has that transition been for you?
So 27 years at Nike, it takes a little time to sort out kind of what being a retired executive feels like. Pandemic was helpful, frankly, since I wasn't traveling all over the world, and I had a chance to kind of reflect a little bit, like much of the world was doing. But it's been great. Actually, it's very different. You know, when you're the COO of Nike, you're running a good chunk of the company. You're operationally making stuff happen. You're digitally transforming the company. You're driving excellence in the operational part of it. I was in charge of tech, planning, workplace environments, et cetera. And then you go to this role of a board member, right? Where your role really is governance, which is largely be present, ask the right questions, bring that experience, that expertise to bear, but not to run Bombardier or run General Mills or run the companies, but to kind of ask the right questions, provoke a little bit of a different lens or thought of the executive teams that run those companies. So that's a little bit of a difference. But I've been on the General Mills board for I think 8 years. So I had a little experience while I was a COO of being in the boardroom, and I was in the Nike boardroom a lot too. So okay. I think I'm doing a pretty good job of the transition. I think.
And do you enjoy this role a bit more, or are they too different? Are they too different?
I loved all of my different jobs at Nike. It's an amazing company, and I love what I do now. Actually, it's very different. I miss. You miss the people, you miss the leadership aspect of those big executive jobs at big companies. I really do enjoy that aspect. There's less of that to do when you're on the board, to be perfectly honest.
Right.
But yeah, it's been, I enjoy it. It's good.
And what is the difference for you in terms of like advising in a retail scenario versus like General Mills, which is more of a food brand?
It's interesting because I think I get chosen for these opportunities largely because of the Nike brand experience, right? And so Bombardier, as an example, makes private aircraft, and but what they want is they don't have a lot of people on the board who think about the brand of Bombardier and what does it mean and who are their consumers and how do they relate directly to those consumers and potential consumers? How should they think about building the brand of Bombardier? What I'm not bringing them is, here's how to make a better airplane. And so each of the board members kind of plays a role and adds some value that way. Same is true for General Mills. I mean, they are a consumer brand, right?
Right.
It's a very different brand than when you wear on your body, right? You consume it, but it's a brand, and they have connections with consumers, and they want to know about where those consumers shop for their product, what they like about their product. So I having run product for 12 years, I can bring some of that. I can ask those questions. I'm a little bit unique, and then I've got a little bit left brain and right brain because half my career was product design and innovation and creation, and the other half of my career was finance and operations and technology. So I think I can ask a pretty broad swath of questions with some context and perspective that's helpful.
Okay. Well, you're kind of a master at connecting with the consumer. You kind of drove that change at Nike by facilitating their digital transformation initially. Yep. And the digital transformation was more of a pivot to connect directly with consumers.
That's right.
Right. What did that entail? Honestly, like for you, how did that transition look like from a COO perspective when you're managing 20,000 employees?
Yeah, 20.
Yes.
30-ish.
What was the pivot like for you?
Well, so we never had a COO before. So really? the executive team, of which I was a member, said, "Hey, there's a lot of stuff going on. This is a changing world. This e-commerce, as we used to call it, kind of this e-commerce is going to change the way we can and will and should connect to our consumers, because the whole model originally was built with a wholesaler in between ourselves and the consumer. You went to Foot Locker to buy Nike shoes. You went to Kohl's to buy Nike apparel. You went to Finish Line. And so you didn't go to
I didn't realize that.
Nike direct. And if you went to Foot Locker to buy it, we didn't know how long you were in their store. We didn't know how many different pairs of Nikes you tried on. We didn't know what you thought of the size. That was all Foot Locker information. And so what we said, literally like almost 15 years ago, we said, you know what, we're going to need to take Amazon was becoming more than a bookstore, right? It was becoming a platform. And we said, hey, we got to think of the marketplace a little differently than how we think of it today. And what's that going to entail? What do we need to do from a technology perspective? And it was a lot. And so we put in the office of the COO, and they asked me, Eric, will you become the COO and take over technology and a bunch of other stuff? But really, your enterprise extra credit assignment is help us digitally transform the company so that even if you are shopping in a Finish Line store or a Foot Locker store, we know that we have a loyalty program. We can have a sharing of inventory. We can ship from store. We can ship from Foot Locker to fulfill a Nike.com order. If we don't have it in our store, we can refer you to where we know that inventory is down the road in New York City. If it's not in the there's a lots of different ways to think about how you can have that direct consumer connection. And in a world where everybody was, it used to be you take an order of 200,000, send it to the factory, ship it back, ship it to Foot Locker. They'd put it out in their stores, and we hope when you went in there, you'd find the color you wanted, the model you were trying to find in your size. And that's just not acceptable. I mean, that hasn't been acceptable for a long time. Right now, if you want a size 12 LeBron in the South Beach colorway, and they don't have it in that store, you're going someplace else. Yeah. I mean, and if I say to you, you know what, that should be back in stock next month, you're like, yeah, I'm not waiting a month for something I want. You just ran an ad that had it in it. He played in it last night. I want. That's what I want. And so that takes predictive analytics. It takes inventory staging. It takes more apps. You got to be able to shop in Foot Locker and us know the information. It's tons of stuff. So we had a framework as to how to do it. Had to buy, I think most people know Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, is on the Nike board. Was the lead independent director for much of my run as COO. He used to tell the story about how Apple, when they were going through this transformation, bought companies that had like the swipe left. They bought the company that owned swipe left, as an example. So we started thinking of acquisitions of capabilities, right? We bought a company that had a great algorithm for lifetime value. We bought a predictive analytics company that spun out of MIT called Select with a C. That meant we could anticipate demand for the product, so we knew where to put it when we would launch it, as an example. We bought a company that had great... you could take a picture of your foot with your cell phone, and it would tell you what size your foot was, and therefore what size of a specific Nike shoe to buy online, so that the reverse logistics, what most people go to a store for is try them on. And you might try on a 9, a 9.5, and a 10. Buy the 10. Well, I don't want you to buy a 9, a 9.5, and a 10 online. I don't want you to buy 3 pairs of shoes and then send 2 back to me, and I got to touch them again and put them back in. So we started to think about it differently, and that has put them in a leadership position, I think, today. And so now they think of it in terms of buying Artifact, which is an unbelievably cool company. And I say to people all the time, I was there for the beginning of that planning. I was not there when that deal got done. Maybe one of the most important acquisitions Nike's made, and since I started working for them, because it's the future, right? It's matching this. We filed a patent for crypto kicks, and people were like, "What are you doing?" Well, this is what the company was doing, right? So merging this online virtual reality with physical product, finding the intersections. You're going to talk about it here at the summit a little bit later with the person who runs Artifact. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and what do you anticipate like Nike's? So when you had your first digital transformation, right? You had all these teams that you had to create out of thin air, essentially, right?
Yeah.
That were in charge of acquisition for apps, creating apps.
Yep.
what do you anticipate the new teams looking like for Web3, and or for like?
Well, I think a
Right.
lot of that's going to come out of how the artifact acquisition develops, right? Because that they're the sharp point of kind
Right.
of how we think about Web3 and the development of that, and this intersection of wearing products on your body and having products in a virtual world, and having them be the same, be different. And you can tell if you bought the monolith from Artifact, if you've got the vials, if you're playing along, you know how wildly crazy this is, and what the future could look like, and really Nike, with Artifact's help and potentially others, will kind of carve a path here that makes sense for that brand and makes sense for the consumers. But it is about high touch, consumer direct connectivity, because letting the consumer relationship with the brand be somebody else's responsibility, i.e. Foot Lockers or i.e. Amazon's, or that's just not acceptable. Then that just doesn't
Yeah.
work.
No, that's an amazing view on it.
That's the
Yeah.
insight. Have a direct consumer connection wherever they shop. Nike store, Nike.com, footlocker.com, eastbay.com,
General Mills.
General, right. And part of what I bring to General Mills is that's what you want to know. Just because they're buying groceries at Walmart, if they're buying Cheerios or they're buying Old El Paso, they're buying Yoplait, I think you want to know who's buying it. Why are they buying it? How much are they buying? That data, that consumer information is going to be critical for product development, personalized advertisements, all that. And so
Data's the new gold, right?
that's exactly right. We had the forethought about it way before companies were thinking about it. So we built an engine that has that, but plenty of work to do. That engine is not all the way built. Building, I should say.
A quick question for you, just because I know that you have talked a lot about sustainability, and I think that really just ties in with the digital transformation that you made. You talked a lot about inventory problems,
Yep.
and over shipping or under shipping, and that ties in a lot with sustainability as well. And like, what were the biggest differences that you saw that made a big impact as far as your sustainability in the company?
Well, so the best thing about the digital tools is the ability to predict anything predictive, right? Predict employee engagement, predict health, predict inventory, where to deploy inventory in the network, so that you can get it to the consumer demand, as quickly and efficiently as possible. Because right now, if you launched a Jordan, let's say a Jordan 11 low, and you thought demand was a million pair, Nike might decide to only launch 500 million. But where would you put that 500 million? Because if it's in the store in Seattle and all the demand's in the East, you're done. And so part of predictive analytics, the power of predictability, means that you can anticipate where you think you should deploy that inventory, or else you have to buy 2 times as much inventory to make sure you have it ready for that consumer demand. That's waste. It's working capital waste, and it's actually potentially waste, and it's liquidation of inventory. So from a corporate sustainability perspective, it helps just eliminate the amount of goods that are in the pipeline. But it's not driven by sustainability. It's driven really by meeting consumer demand.
Right. Just a nice side effect.
It is. Where sustainability really makes a difference is in the creation of the product. Because for the lifetime of the athletic footwear and apparel industry, that business model has been about where you make it. And where you make it has been, where is accessible, low-cost labor. It's why it used to be in the northeast of the United States. Then it was Japan. Then it was Taiwan. Then it was Korea. Now it's Vietnam. It's Indonesia. It's inland China. It's Myanmar, right? So it's always about, the model seems to be about where. What we try to do is, I don't want to talk about where we're going to make the next billion pair of footwear. I want to talk about how we're going to make it and what we're going to make it out of, so that we can reimagine making footwear anywhere, and we can make it the carbon footprint for the earth.
Yeah.
is
so
li-
interesting.
is limited. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So, and I think you're seeing more and more energy, more startups, more entrepreneurs are less focused on where am I going to make it, although still important because cost of labor is different around the world. But they're starting to talk about what are the methods of manufacturing, what are the methods of make, what's digital printing, digital stitching, how can I automate some of this so that it's not a where is the accessible lower cost labor. It's really about how am I going to make it? And then really importantly, what materials am I using to make the product from? That's pretty inspiring. If you're a designer or an innovator, that's a pretty inspiring brief. That's better than,
Have you heard
hey,
of mushroom leather?
yeah, you bet.
Yeah,
You bet.
it's like the new
Oh yeah.
new leather.
Yeah, mushroom packaging. Mushrooms are great.
Mushrooms are
Spider
amazing
silk
for
is great.
sustainability.
Recycled polyester. You know, we've done I think at one point we were the number one or number two user of recycled polyester in the world.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Turning water bottles into basketball jerseys. Every NBA team plays in recycled polyester jersey, as an example.
So many things I didn't even know about Nike. And what do you think are the strongest qualities to have in a leader to drive big impactful changes like this?
I always start with people kind of merge leadership and management. They're two totally different skill sets. And most people, as they advance their career, you have to be good at both. But really good managers can be terrible leaders, and terrible managers can be really good leaders. If you're the CEO of a company, you have maybe 10 or 12 direct reports. You need to be a good manager. I need to, I need a good boss. I need to know how I'm doing. I need feedback. I need the tools to do my job well. I need your door to be open so I can access you. I need to know kind of what's expected of me. I need a job description. I want to be paid fairly, blah, 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 right? That's a manager's job. As a CEO, also has they are also the leader of the entire organization. And a leader's job is to create an environment where everybody can be their most authentic self and come to work and do their best work every day. They're inspired. They're working for a purpose-driven company. They know what the mission is. They know what the vision is. They're proud of the company they work for. That's a leader's job, and they're very, very different. And so I always start with recognize they're different and being a great leader, because like if my direct reports, their manager is me. I'm also their leader because they have direct reports, but my boss is also the leader. So people have to think about it. People need to think about leadership differently, and it's hard work. You have to give more energy than you take. You have to hold people accountable for results, and you set the culture of the company through leadership, not through management. So that's why I think it's important.
Well said.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yep, you bet.
I really enjoyed our conversation.
I did too. Thanks,
Thank
Juliette.
you. Thank you, Eric.